So this week's episode of Rewrite, we finally hit a branch, a different turn than all the other routes have ever took, because we knew, based on what happened, that we knew that Kagri was going to change something in Kotaro's life, so that this route, this time, this Terra arc, should lead to a path where humanity can survive. They did it in a really interesting way, and I'm assuming when you play the visual novel, the choices that were popping up in his head with that, like, campfire or the bonfire, whatever the hell it was, I assume that when you play the visual novel, those are like the choices that pop up on screen. But I thought it was an interesting touch adding that exact same imagery and multiple choices when we're going inside Kotaro's mind, as he didn't know why he was doing it, but he had these choices floating around in his mind, and he kept going one by one, not even knowing why. Like, he's not understanding, like, why am I going to catch Akane falling from a tree? She's not falling, but that happened later. So I thought it was a really interesting touch going inside his mind, as now we see what Kagri, or Moon Kagri, did for this route, as she somehow implanted the decisions in his mind ahead of time before it would actually happen. So I thought it was really interesting. I liked how they used the imagery and how they were like floating the choices into the correct choice. I thought that was really cool, but that does probably explain last week, as I did mention, it seemed like Kotaro was remembering things from previous lives without even really realizing it. So I think that is probably tying into whatever Kagri did with his mind, so he knows exactly what to do, such as, hey, I don't think it's a good idea for you to drive away. You know, her dog just died, when talking about Katori there. So I think Kagri probably planted the right things in his mind for even things like that, so things could be avoided, possibly like Katori's parents dying and things like that. But I thought it was very interesting with how they used the image. Like, it was very basic animation, black background, fire, and then choices floating around, but I thought it was a really artistic and nice choice, and I assume those choices are exactly what were in the visual novel, or pretty damn close to it. But I do like now that we're branching off, as we've seen the similarities, we've seen that, like, this is how all the arcs went up to this point, except in the previous arc, he always, it seemed, to probably attack the key, or did something that angered the key, which resulted in the key attacking him, resulting in Katori making a deal with the key to save his life, and then he would go into that coma and forget who he was, kind of a thing. So this is the first time that he doesn't go in that route, at least as far as we know here. So it's going to be interesting now how it's going to diverge, as, if I'm not mistaken, the way the Moon episode first started out, or the Terra episodes first started out, is we saw him in an army. So now that he has left Japan, I assume we're going to focus on him in some sort of military, or some sort of badass combat training, because Kotaro's always been a fairly weak character. He does have an insane power, he does have rewrite, that does let him become crazy strong, but at the core, after he finally got involved, he was always not strong enough to be able to protect those he wanted to. So now that he didn't end up in a coma, and that he'll have all these years that he didn't have before, it's going to be interesting to see how strong he's going to be by the time we see whatever, like, starts to bring the destruction of Earth to happen, because I assume when Kotaro returns to Japan, when everything starts happening again, we're going to see the characters, Akane and the rest, as their normal age, but Kotaro's going to be much older now because he's not in that coma and things like that, or maybe he will stay the same age because his weird rewrite, his body doesn't age at the same time there. But it's going to be interesting nonetheless to see how much more strong he's going to get, and watching him, I assume watching him train and become strong enough so he can protect Earth, become that hero. It's going to be pretty interesting seeing how that happens and how that plays out. But I thought this was a really cool episode, mainly because we knew a lot of the stuff that was going to happen in this episode. We knew that Katori was going to be in those woods. We knew that the key was going to be in those woods. And now we got the confirmation at like 100% who was the second girl in the forest, as we've always known there was two girls there. And I can't remember if I ever speculated if it was Akane. I don't believe so. I could have, but it's been a while since I watched season 1. But we do get the confirmation that it was Akane was the second girl in the forest when he got his arm cut off, pretty much. So it's pretty interesting seeing how everything has now finally played out. We know everything about season 1, all the weirdness that we weren't 100% on board with, or weren't 100% sure of what it truly meant. We now know what all that is, and now we're in a brand new arc, and only greatness or tragedy can await here. But that's why I've liked Rewrite, is because I felt, compared to other visual novel anime adaptations, I felt like it was very basic and straightforward. But in the case of Rewrite, there's a lot of information. You don't really know exactly what's going on. Right off the bat, you'll say, okay, I think I have an idea of where this is going, and then it'll immediately twist you and say, no, this is where it's going. And now everything in the first season 100% connects into place here. And I appreciate that, because you don't see a lot of stories like this, and I've heard nothing but good things about the visual novel, and it stands out to a lot of people who even play a lot of visual novels, because there is so many crazy twists like this and all that. So I think it's just a really it's something I appreciate. I'm a little sad, you know, some people in terms of anime onlys who don't enjoy this, but hey, people are gonna have different opinions. But I think this does really stick out as being a really clever and a really different type of series, and I think it's just intelligent with how it does its twists and how it does its story points and everything like that. And I just loved seeing how everything kind of happened the way it did, with those fires in his mind, pointing him to the right choices without him even really knowing it, seeing him not actually attack the key, even betraying Guardian there, because he didn't tell Guardian about Akane being there or the key being there. So that, in theory, because they don't know the key's there at this moment, because if he would have attacked the key, he would have been placed in that coma, so then Guardian would have known generally that the key's probably alive there. So I think in doing so, possibly the key might have a bit more or a bit better of a chance to not get attacked by either Guardian or Gaia, and possibly that could also help with Earth not getting completely destroyed kind of a thing. But I think the whole thing is, you know, we know Kotaro just got involved too late in the game, so now that he's starting his training early, it's going to be really interesting to see how damn strong he's going to be by the time Calamity starts hitting this Earth here, and what kind of a badass he's going to be. But what's going to be really interesting is Kotaro's rewrite changed after he was fused with Kaguri's ribbon. So currently his rewrite still is just with his blood and things like that. So it's going to be interesting watching his rewrite evolve while only using like his blood. I think it's going to be really fascinating to see what kind of a badass he'll become, as we've seen him use his blood into spears and things like that. So I think it's going to be really cool to see that. But I thought this episode overall, it was really fun. It was really cool seeing everything finally fall into place here. And I thought actually animation-wise, I mean, once again, people are going to bitch about the CGI. I'm fine with it. I think, yeah, it doesn't look pretty, it doesn't look polished, but I like how it feels so at a place with the monsters compared to the character models. But I thought, you know, character model-wise, everything like that, there definitely was dips in terms of facial expressions on more medium shots, but what you would expect with rewrite. But I thought at the core, it was a fairly consistent episode animation-wise, and even when it was doing basic things like the black background, the choices floating around with the fire, I thought it was very artistic with how it handled it, and I thought just overall, the spectacle of the episode got kind of the wow moment across, at least for myself. But I thought this was a really good episode here. Not much more to say for this episode, except it was great. I'm really excited to see where Kotaro's training and what he's going to do now, because I assume we're going to see him in the army, things like that, like we saw near the beginning of the series here. But I'm interested to see where it goes here, and just where this is going to end up, and if we can finally save Earth, because I thought this was a fantastic episode. But for anyone who watched this episode, what did you think? Adaptation-wise, anime onlys, what did you think about this episode? And for anime onlys, where do you think next week is going to go? So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and before you leave, hit that like button if you did enjoy the video. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.